All right, and I think we are live. Hello, everybody. For the next session, we've done quite a few within the Sigma Sprint program. This is kind of the pre-builder, pre-hackathon phase, where we scheduled a couple of nice, easygoing sessions, both technical and non-technical. Just to double check, yes, you can hear me today, because I have spent a couple of sessions talking to myself for a good few minutes, which is not ideal. But anyways, I'm not going to be doing the talking today. We have Eomji from Encode and Pauline from the Wormhole Foundation. We're going to lead the session. Eomji, I think you have prepared a wonderful presentation for us. Today, we're going to be talking how to communicate, right? How to talk about what you're doing, how to communicate about what you're building, how to communicate to different audiences maybe, and how to build a narrative for what you're doing. Kind of very critical, very important things when you consider building more than just maybe a small side project. And I think this fits very nicely into the scope of what we've been talking about even yesterday. Dan was on with a marketing and branding session, and then Cody and Thomas followed up with a community building session, which were all extremely insightful. Honestly, even I've learned a couple of things, given I've been here for many years. So definitely worth checking out. So without further ado, Eomji, Pauline, take it away. I'm going to disappear from the stage. If you need me, I'm here. Let me know. But otherwise, have fun.
Sounds good. I think, Pauline, you can introduce yourself first, and I will be sharing my screen.
Yes. Okay, so hi, everyone. I am Pauline. I'm the developer relation at Wormhole. So I'm sure everybody knows what a DevRel does. I'm joking because it's constantly a problem. We have to explain that. But basically, I'm here to help any developer and any developer audience to build with our product. And so any sorts of technical question, but also non-technical question, like the one we're going to do today. So yeah, and I have been working with Eomji a few times. Recently, we just wrapped up the Wormhole hackathon with Encode. And so, yeah, we know each other quite well. So it's a pleasure.
Thank you. So everyone, good to see you. Some of you perhaps have seen me in maybe like different boot camps, hackathons, or even conferences. Recently, I met some community members during Breakpoint, which was amazing. Today, we're going to be talking about how to communicate your product. So let me share the screen. Yes. I think you can see this. All right. Okay, so today, first, everyone, good to see you again. Some of you perhaps have seen me before. Some of you, it's going to be your first time. So I will have a quick intro later on as well. But otherwise, this is going to be the session about how to build in your product narrative, how to communicate clearly about your product to what audience. So they're especially when you're building something quite technically complex, it can be very challenging. So we're going to be exploring how to simplify and humanize the way we talk about products and turning complex technical ideas into a little bit compelling stories that you can resonate with the people, and then delivering your product to those users or developers or investors, having some interesting narrative and stick to their mind. As I said, I'm Eomji from Encode Club, Web3 education community. We are a global community of top developers, professionals, talented students, working on different technical topics. As with Wormhole, recently we had a hackathon, and there's a lot of ongoing education program. So soon you will see that again in Accelerate program. You can find me on Twitter as Eomji Park as well. Especially end of this session, there are going to be some call to action that if you send me the narrative, I will be also reviewing things and offer some feedback to first 5 to 10 teams. So please stay tuned. First, why communication matters. As Urban mentioned, that you already have amazing sessions with, Dan about marketing, branding, or how to build a community and everything. So perhaps you already learned that all those communication is it matters for your product, and B, it's a duty as a founder, especially if you're founding members. Either you're a technically amazing researchers or engineers, but as a founder, one of the duty is communicate your product to the world, because in the end, otherwise, who's going to be knowing and using it? So before we jump into the like general narrative, like look into just like this bullet points, like what it actually means. So great products can fall like without clear communication, that you build a like an amazing product, but there's no marketing, nobody knows. It turned into the disappointment. I really like the like graph like Dan was introducing. Like that's amazing capture that yes, there are going to be cases that as a developer engineer you saw that like some interesting is coming out to the market, but then it didn't communicate well, it dies, and you know the technology is amazing, but people will not invest their time in that. They don't understand. So that's really important. And because especially a lot of our products, blockchain concepts can be very complex. This is still early stage. A lot of things you are building are technically very like complex, even to people who has been in IT spaces. A lot of you are coming from Web 2 IT, and still there's a lot of like tech jargons or concepts we need to learn and understand. So if you focus on those like cryptographic algorithm, the consensus mechanism, decentralization, certain audience you will earn their heart, but certain audience you will lose. So all those kind of things matter. And then like communicating your project can influence like your project in very different way. So either you secure the investment, or like you're gonna have different partners, you secure like end users. If you're in the hackathon, so in this hackathon setting, you're perhaps under time pressure of building something like nice to present by the end of the deadline, and then going to show to the judge in very, very like small time domain. You need to capture their attention quickly to make them understand why among those other 100 like very similar looking projects, why your product is interesting, what core value you're bringing, and why you need to win this, or like why you want to keep building, so you need to get invested, or why users need to use your products. So today we will focus on turning your complex ideas product into a bit relatable stories with some basic framework, so that you can like start with, and then like we can perhaps like explore further like what each step look like. So you may heard about like storytelling a lot. Like some of them gonna sound like extremely lame because it's actually the basics you need to really like keep. But also some of them gonna have a lot of open-ended door that you can explore around. But one of the most effective way to communicate your product is through storytelling. Storytelling is not like we are talking like making some like fairy tale story. It's more like humans are much easier to remember things which has a logical sense of the connection, and you remember that like if certain difficulties, if it gets getting solved, if there's like really interesting ideas which are gonna make money. So in any sense, they should have some relations and it stick to their mind, and you need to dominate that field in their brain. Now, if you think about like certain storytelling of like certain image of the product, when I say like a game in the blockchain space, even though there's not so many games, you always claim something gonna come to your mind first. If you say the best DeFi project, so there's a different things come to your mind, but I'm sure that once when we make a poll, there are gonna be huge overlapping fields when we say flash loan, when we say cross-chain messaging. So it gonna come a lot of different projects come immediate to your mind. It means they dominate that field, and that like a connection and that stories within that. So you want to win that. It can be as like a huge as like a cross-chain messaging, but it can be even like a getting niche within the game domain or DeFi domain. So there's a different experience. Will you be like fastest one, easiest one to use? Will you be prettiest one, or like a funniest one? There are going to be all different storylines coming up, and then we're going to be thinking about like how can you make having some engaged like emotions with users. They gonna have their own logic in the storyline and understand you, which make them very powerful, stick to their mind, so that people can relate to your product. They're like a I don't know, if you're like a sleeping very late, like something gonna help in your scheduling like morning, or like if you're like a DeFi trader who are like a very doing like frequently trading, if something gonna be like telling me what to do in certain time domain or certain conditions. So you're gonna think about some problems they're gonna have, and you need to make story around, not about like dumping the technical detail. When it creates the memorable connection, like it'll be much easier for them to advocating your product to someone else as well, and then they start to care. People are not as rational as we want and we believe. So there was when we have an emotion attached, that like it can be as irrational as like perhaps you may want to work with a Wormhole forever just because you like Urban and Pauline. It can be very irrational, but very rational, because if you're developers, you like it because maybe you got the best support. It's the instinct we develop as a human, you know. So it's a rational but irrational things that making a memorable connection, and your product must be that thing to people, that people are using the product because they feel like it can solve the problem. And to do so, you need to understand audience. You are a founder who are going to be talking to investors and users, especially if your app is targeting those users, or developers. If you're building a technical product, which or the primary users going to be the developer who need to build something on top of yours, all the product is like really having a different perspective and different offering they're going to be looking into. So that is something like, let's think about a little bit, going through like how you can build those narrative. As we can see, a single pitch won't fit every situation, and you need to be flexible. How different audience going to be seeing different things? Who are your stakeholders? Are you presenting this to developers or investors? Or even you are presenting in the mixed group of the audience? Who are your main target audience right now? You may need to choose at that time. You just cannot talk about 5 different things, So each group cares about different aspect of your product. Developers are interested in perhaps technical details, but also it's really important that how it's easy to work with and what kind of support they get. So when you're talking about your product, you're going to perhaps emphasize some technical details and advantage over other products, but also maybe support, documentation, all these kind of things are much, much more important than other group of people. If you talk about users more concerned about like how that it makes their life easy. Actually, it's the same for everyone. Developers, how can we make their life easy? To make it easy to develop. Users, it's a different product. If it's a DeFi product, if it's a game, it'll be all different story. If it's a game, if it's a fun one, or people are playing to have different experience, if they want to make a friend, if they want to unstress themselves. So when you position yourself, you need to talk about that to that specific users or specific audience group. What if it's the investors? So you're talking to investors. What investor care most about your product? By the way, I'm watching the chat, so if you have a question, feel free to ask question along the way. So the investors, you may think like investors care about my tech. Investors care about like what innovation we bring. Partly yes, but no. Eventually, what investors need to know is like the return on investment. I'm not saying they're just investing for the sake of money, but it's more like in the end, that's the logic how investment fund is working. So they cannot neglect that. So in the future, so either they're looking at your team as a founders, or they're looking at your product, a certain function. Their core logic is, in the end, if you're going to bring us some return. So when you're making a product narrative, and if you're explaining to those investors, you may then think about like how to show your project has a 100 potential to bring some return afterwards. It's not necessarily, you need to bring like a blindly go to market slide. That's common mistake people do. It's more about like either your product growth or like your team, how your team is like so sticky to each other and so obsessed to solving a problem. Whatever it is, when you're building a narrative, you can think about what is their core interest, and then you need to answer that to interest. And then, of course, the very important thing is you also need to adjust technicality of your message. That's the common pitfall. A lot of technical entrepreneurs or like developers face that. I myself, I have a mechanical engineering background. Even while giving this, I have exactly same problem whenever I'm building something, hackathon project or fun technical projects. I sometimes cannot stop myself going into how we implement such difficult thing and how we can innovate something which is going to be immediately uninterest someone who is listening that in 10 seconds. It's really difficult, but you need to practice this. So that like before going into like line by line your code or like your protocols architecture, how it's working, you may need to think about it's a really core thing. And then do I need to really go into depth now? So in hackathon, one tip is like please like quickly write down and just focus on 2 core feature. It can be even 1. What this is serving, and don't talk about other things. And then you can always add some technical details in different slides. And when you get casual, you can even quickly go over. If there's no Q&A, handle those core features first. And only 2 features you're the most proud of, you're going to mention, but don't go over it. That's my tip. The 1 or 2, you just stick to it. And then you will realize that even that, you don't have enough time. So being able to shift your narrative based on the audience and the stage of your product help you communicate more effectively. This sounds simple, but also very difficult thing to do because you need to fight your instinct a lot. If you are used to be someone who was teaching or like explaining very technically complex things to some audience, once when you suddenly need to pitch your product, you get lost. So please practice that. And one of the best way is like you try to write down a few core functions and try to stick to that and don't go over that line. This is the guideline in that sense. That in the end, if you become like an amazing like a founders or product person having great like a skill of writing your product narrative, you don't need to really follow the framework per se. Just this is the like a starting point what you can think about. So the hook is basically like, as you can imagine from the name, you need to capture the attention by presenting either the problem or the result that like what your product is going to do that. Like there could be like very painful problem existing somewhere, or absolutely amazing result like you can present like how it would be. You need to hook the audience, and then after that you can explain how you are solving, what's your role, like your product is like what it's doing in that space, and then you can go further that explaining this hook becoming unfolded to resolution, explaining about some impact, why it matters. So I brought some very broad example. Let's say if you're like trying to explain like Ethereum to someone, depending on also like if it's a developer users, it can be a very different story. Because like we can pitch this one to like someone who are trading things or someone making a application on top of it. But let's say someone like who is building a certain like an app on top of certain primitive, you may say there's a certain limitation of the traditional contract, which is very costly and slow, right? And you may exaggerate or like not exaggerate, like highlight specific things like how slow it is or how it's prone to human error. And then like you will like break down that how like this contract can help you without intermediaries solving this problem, and it's decentralized. And then you go further that like expanding this like logic, how transparently it can create like a huge like system, and it can create certain design and so on. This is the one example, but we will have some case study right after this as well. Try to a little bit think a few different cases that maybe Uniswap, you can think about Tesla, Airbnb, what problem like it was serving, and what is the hook, why you ever use that, like why you ever use the Uber. Like I was traveling, I cannot talk to local drivers. Uber minimizing that like a communication overhead. So your hook in Uber case, will it be like you can just book a taxi with a one click as the hook, or will it be like we have an amazing matching algorithm that in the fastest way your taxi going to be come to your way, and then you're going to get XYZ. Perhaps people don't care. If you talk about Tinder, maybe your hook going to be you find someone. Just like one thing, you're going to have a fun weekend. Instead of saying that we're going to have, again, very complex algorithm of like collecting people and then how we're going to be solving your issue to find your partner, but rather you focus on like some experience. So like a focus on hook, what it's serving, and that should be some more like a fundamental value instead of you focusing on how the technology is specifically doing. And then like this is a case study. I wanted to quickly bring it up. Brave browser, I brought it as an example because Brave is like a crypto project, like a Web3 project, but at the same time very widely used by Web2 users as well. It's a nice browser. So I wanted to just explain like how hook and journey and resolution could be. So for me, like personally, when I got into Brave browser, was like it's a privacy maxi, and it's actually giving me an opportunity to pay like a basic attention token, my attention to someone. So I got compensated by the time I'm spending to watch specific thing I'm interested in, and I can actually circulate that to some users. And that one was like very simply like presented there, like the browser for privacy. It was not even overcomplicating things, and then bring your attention to something else. So those hook about like you don't want to have invasive ads, which was like it was sold to a lot of people because people were very interested in using ad blocker, and why not having a browser who is default mode like that. And then the journey was like even going further, focusing on not only like providing privacy, but more different actions that you can utilize your attention. And the resolution is more in detail, so that what impacts it's bringing. So you have your control over your data again, and then your attention again. But we sometimes need to think, like, if the audience is going to be interested in, you said that, like, you need to have a control over your data again, we will give that to you. Will it be really like hooking and interesting? Or like if you said that, like, do you want privacy? Sometimes your message should be very simple, and then it should be like bringing some emotions first. Then you can unfold a bit of the technicality behind, and then how it's doing and what truly it means in the impact wise. So you need to make people curious first. Now, crafting your own product narrative, so that if you start to think about, so what is my hook? What is my journey? What is my resolution? It's a little bit more confusing. There's a very simple word you can think about, and this is going to be helping you to build, is like what and why and how. So what is literally explain your product in one liner. Keep it concise, simple, no jargons. If you say that product line, and then if it makes you thinking about like a 10 to 20 different other like a projects, maybe that's a wrong explanation, or your product is not niche enough. If you think of, if you make this liner and if it brings like a 3-4 different products exactly rival to you, maybe you are on really good direction. But that what is giving you the like what it actually does. So you can start with like a 3-4 simple keywords. It does do DeFi lending, or it does do I don't know, like some game, and then like a asset management. You can start with those, and then like you can evolve your story around and what's the important message there and why. Like, why are you doing this? Especially if you're a founding member, why are you building this? What are you actually serving? I'm not saying that you need to stick to real world problem per se, which is very important to mass adoption. But when you're building some technical product for technical persons, sometimes it's not like really feeling like real world things. You're inventing some new things around that. But so why should he care? That's very important, and that is the part why going to be helping you to build your hook and resolution in the future. That why people need to care, and that people are going to be, you know, like you're walking around and someone said they're like, you know, yesterday I could serve this very fast, and so, oh, what did you do? That hook should be your hook. And then how is so that you can highlight certain core technology but keep it accessible. Discuss like its different aspects, how your technology was enhancing certain like a certain solution, so that why, unless you are the first mover, first one in the market, whoever tries such, you can explain also why you are better by explaining how this is solving. So because some why, when it comes down to the very core value, you may share why with some different like competitors, like how can I spend like my free time, Netflix, Lego, games, gym, all of them gonna be maybe solving my hobby time. So their why may integrate it to like a one, like a, you know, in the end they will be maybe converged to one reason, but how they are solving going to be different. So when you combine it, what are you doing, why are you doing, and then how you are doing, it's going to give you a very nice narrative to build. And by identifying why, you will see also certain drivers, it slipped your mind. Such as, like, I think it was very fascinating when someone is like talking about what is the driver of the Lego, and I think Lego team was like, we thought about some toy or something like that, but they were like a mention completed something as something like a Netflix, or like a if it was in Asian market, like study time, because basically they're fighting for hobby time. So if anything is capturing free time, is their rival. So such as if you nail down to why of your product, you will realize that who is actually your competitor. Ultimately, all the Web2 services we are fighting against. But you can also see that how you can position your project or product to users or developers or investors by providing these answers. This is the common pitfalls. We already repetitively talking about how it should be like. So this is perhaps something you could like, how to say that, like expect it. But let's like make sure that we tackle this. We go through this a little bit like in detail, so that like what is the typical mistake people still making. One is like too technical and too early. So the first thing is like you're overloading a lot of like technical details to your audience too early. So they should get onboarded. Like while technology is fascinating, it can overwhelm people. and they don't know like why it even matters, and they don't find it interesting. Interesting analogy, which going to be like when Nintendo was actually releasing the Pokemon Go. Perhaps this is revealing my age, but I was playing Pokemon Go during my study time. But what happened? In the beginning, the game was really, really simple. So that when you open, you just like see, AR and just capture the Pokemon. No gym fight or any other like different like dynamics. It was too simple. While this game, I think someone who already know about this, like a bit of like a game companies, they know that like there was another game existing previously. I think it's Embrace or something like that. They're very similar dynamic, and Nintendo Pokemon Go is literally using the map of it. So they could building different types of like actions perhaps much easier and much faster, but on purpose, they were realizing different game dynamics one by one, very slow to onboard a lot of people who never played a mobile game before. So if you are the person like or the age that who are playing Pokemon Go when you're like around elementary school to like a very very adult, I was the other side, but you actually see that like people who have a children like much older who watch Pokemon when they were young were playing the game very easily because game was releasing new feature very slowly. You just capture, now you collect some item, and then like they were introducing gym or trading Pokemon and so on very very late. So when game become quite complex, already a lot of people who are not used to playing mobile game could play the game. So you don't need to blindly follow those tactics. Sometimes some project speed is really, really like important. But what I'm saying is like you shouldn't deliver things like too early. Why you need to ship fast? It's really contradictory story, but you shouldn't like dumping technical details to people and overwhelm them. So before they got introduced to your product properly, and they will be leaving. And of course, missing why. In the end, whatever like technically it's interesting, if there's answer why, like if it doesn't like answer the needs of the audience, if it doesn't solve my problem, this problem can be as simple as irrational as even fun, or having friends to do something together. It can be as illogical as like I will be on DeFi because my friends are there, it's fun to do together. Maybe like it's, you see that some project, you see that it's a little bit like having fun vibe, people want to belong there and doing together. So there's no absolute answer why you need to pursue, but when you are speaking to like developers, investors, and users, you need to provide why they need to turn off and turn up, and they are staying with you, why they are doing this. I think the workshop about the community said very similar thing as well. They're like you need to give a reason why they want to come and do something together, very similar to your product. You need to give a why they need to try this. One thing I want you to be very careful is in crypto, a lot of projects are promising the incentives and monies. Why is like if you come here, you will become rich. If you're here, you need to you will get the airdrop. This was perhaps like once working and seems maybe still working nowadays, but it's not the way to get long-term community or users around. So you need to be very careful. Okay, I'm not saying you shouldn't give any incentive, but incentives doesn't need to be monetary value. It can be friendship. It can be they having fun. It can be you literally solving their problem that they can save their time during the day. So let's focus on missing why, and then please don't provide why as like you can become rich. Unless it's like DeFi. Of course, DeFi financial product is different story. But like even DeFi, maybe like if someone tell me the easiest way to understand DeFi and you can do X, Y, Z, like then the easiness, saving time, or like I don't need to worry about during sleep, gonna be the product, right? Like having a comfort sleep, DeFi, gonna be also a very interesting product. So I'm gonna make that as a slogan, like sleep well with our DeFi project. But anyway, so this is important to provide why, and so that it brings some human elements, some emotional connection, so that people think about like, okay, it's relatable to me. This project doesn't look like it's something like, oh, it's not me. It's some like highly technical people are going to be using it for XYZ, but not my product, but they should feel like I can do it. I can use that. It can benefit my life. And then, of course, refine your pitch, your narrative itself. It need to be like, you need to like practice that. One is like you need to simplify your message. Actually, writing a long message is much, much easier than a very short and concise message. That's what I'm trying to practice a lot as well. I assume a lot of audience here going to be internationals who also like it doesn't speak English as a first one, your native one. Then it can be sometimes even more challenging because we need to put our time to practice how to convey our message in very concise manner. But you can do it. It's something you can be trained, especially if you're founders. Again, I'm sorry to say this, it's your duty. You don't need to be excellent that like you need to like suddenly become, you know, the best speaker in the world, but we can practice how to pitch our product better. And the simplification is the key so that people can remember very easily. And then let's focus on value, not just features. Again, in the hackathon especially, I saw so many cases that people come to the stage, practice in the practice pitch, like I review like quite many pitches over like last 3 years, is like people focus on specific feature. Hey, we added like a share feature. Hey, we added also like a comment feature. You talk about like a social app and you go into like each one. Oh, so our app, first you log in. We all know that you need to use Wallet Connect and log in. So you don't need to focus on explaining log in unless there is a reason for it. So don't focus on like a neglectable feature or even feature itself. You need to share the value. If the share button was really important, what you perhaps wanted to say is like when you're seeing something fun, you want to share to your friend immediately. You click this button, you share in a second. Not like you're going to say, this is talking to this API, so that it can call into Twitter and it can share to Twitter. So you will not talk about the feature and how it works. You're going to talk about its value. You hit their like emotion. They're like, oh my God, that's interesting. I want to do that. How is it possible? Why others cannot do that? Or why yours is faster? Then you're going to explain technical details. So it's quite important to practice this, how to like make this message and delivering this with confidence, either in written message, either in like a verbal like a version. Like now I'm giving a presentation. You may give a presentation somewhere. You may send a message somewhere. It's much more natural if you do it like a multiple times. And then please seek for the feedback. And the best one is like when you go to hackathon, you often get the feedback in directly or indirect way. So please like seek for feedback, bother your mentors. Those mentors going to be there to ping pong your idea, and also they can advise you like focus on different things. So all those going to be helping you a little bit more. And one last thing, like before going like forward, I want to say is like all this kind of thing is a basic guideline. But again, once you're gonna find your own drill, your own playbook, that's really important. So please like don't take this thing as a face value of like checklist, but you need to digest this one and make it as a yours, and you may craft different bits. So the important part is like crafting your own narrative. It's time for action. You need to build your own product narrative. So remember, the goal is to make complex ideas relatable and easy to understand so that people are going to remember your product. First, you need to understand your audience. In this hackathon page, and further, when you're going to be, going to Accelerator, you're going to build your product. Please tailor your message to their needs. You can have a multiple page around. Of course, there should be core thing, because you cannot make website for developers, website for investors, website for end users. So you're going to have one core message, but the core message going to be deviating a little bit differently depending on whom to explain. And of course, like if your primary user is developer, if your primary user is end users, depending on that, you're going to shape your product page. And then you need to focus on the value, what your product brings, not just the technical features. So please don't make like a full of the jargons. Of course, in the hackathon, by the way, it's also important your technical things a little bit in your repo, let's say. You don't need to pitch that all the way long in detail, but please, when you're submitting something, having a very clear explanation which bounty you are tackling, what you are building, in which tech stack is very smart move. You make judges' life easier. Just think about who's your audience? Is it judges? How do you make their life easier? Make it easy to deploy your project and see your code base, and then see your repo that it explains very, very well. That's your product narrative to judges in the hackathon. So please, don't write down like something blindly, but technical features especially more focusing on how these are tackling each bounty, which is going to be helping judges really, really a lot. And then, of course, it's essential to know how to adjust those, avoid unnecessary jargons. There's one exceptional case. If you are doing something for your community and building a certain belongingship, you may make certain jargons such as GM, you can see a GWorm, this kind of things. This is certain jargons that outside there from this community will not understand, but you also make some belongings. And there's a certain jargons people can understand a little bit easier, and then they feel like, oh, I can start to use it and join the community. And there are certain jargons like it actually close the community and people cannot join, depending on the direction of your community, what you are building. Because there are certain community you want to perhaps have like a closed community, such as the spies, and then you will see that like a in your like a ecosystem you want to have much more builders coming, much more like users coming, that you want to build certain jargons which can be easily onboarding people, so that it give you some belongingship, but at the same time it's not too difficult that the others cannot follow, so try to like adjust your message accordingly depending on your audience. Avoid unnecessary jargons, but if there's certain jargons you are making for community vibe or your product vibe, making sure that it's still in an accessible one that people can easily use and onboard it. And use this like a hook, journey, resolution, or like why, how, all these bits. Please use you as a starting guideline, but don't stick to this like a robot, like a line by line. Because also when you start to have a very like a based on framework pitch, it can get very, very boring. And then like your users or like investors, definitely they see like 100 decks, like they're going to see immediately, but also your users, it's starting to getting a little bit boring. Like there's a certain surprise are missing. So follow the basics. If you don't know well, that's the best way to start with. But also once like if you understand your product really well, because you're going to have your own time to digest information for what you are building and finding true reason why you are doing, then you can refine things, but have your own drill, your own playbook. You're going to find that what is the best message you want to convey. And of course, please still listen to the feedback and you will get there. It's really like contradictory things. You need to have your own like steady like a vision while get some feedback. And once when you have a right product message, they're going to be like it, which is going to stick to like longer term. And then you can build a lot of stories around that. And finally, refining things, practice is key. So you're going to be going through certain iterations. I really want you to take some minutes to write like a 2-3 sentences about what you are building or like your hypothetical idea. If you are like not yet started to building something, so I know that here in hackathon you have some like maybe project ideas where you never built something, or you're already building something but trying to go more multi-chain. So depending on what you're doing, try to a little bit thinking about what is your core product narrative of this hackathon, or going further in how to say it in the bigger scale. If you're building as like a product which is going to be launching and looking for investors in the future, identifying what is the problem you're solving, what will be the hook. People are going to be like, what does that? And then explain your product solution with the simple words, how you're using Wormhole, how you're addressing certain issues, how did you solve that people are asking like, what? It's actually doing that? I want to know more. Then you have an answer for that. Once when you wrap that up, I'm very happy to see some of your this product narrative coming up. Feel free to post that openly on Twitter, tagging me, Urban Pauline, or feel free to send me DM as well on Twitter. My DM is open now. I will be happily giving some feedback to first 5 to 10 teams. Take a moment to think through your narrative, simplify your message, and I'm very, very looking forward to your project keep building. Now, I think we have some time, have some quick discussion around. If you have any questions, feel free to post. We will be here around.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Eomji. And really, like in the chat, you can ask any question you want. We will answer them live. Just to add on top of that, I mean, it was basically everything she said. You can definitely apply it because it's like awesome advice, like really. I think what might be interesting also for you guys to hear is that we both have been sitting as hackers, and at least I have, but also as judges, right? Like I used to work for protocols as well, and so I set into this this role where you get to judge maybe 60 people under 2 hours, and they have 2 minutes each or something like this, and it's global. And so I have seen this, and I have also judged on online. I want you to remember that we are listening, like what she said, we are listening to pitch every 2 minutes, right? So there is a massive incentive on what you use as words. How do you come in? Like, how do you come in as a team, right? If you are very disorganized, if you don't have a lot of time, right? Like we are here, we're going to listen to 100 of pitch deck, and this is just us, and we are here to help and so on. But imagine a VC, right? Imagine a VC that is looking through those decks, and then after, I think they spend 4 seconds, like not even 4 seconds on the first few slides. So it is extremely important, and I know, because I am the same. I wanted at the beginning to give as much technical details as possible because I felt that it added value, right? But I guarantee you one thing, nobody would invest in you without checking your stack. They will come, like the question will come. They will check how you did, your back and your front, everything will go through review. So they would definitely ask question if they need explanation. But this is not how she said, is not how they get curious. Let's say you're pitching for implementing a Wormhole project. If you spend the first 20 seconds telling me, yeah, we did a Wormhole because it's an interoperability solution. I work here, so I know you're solving that problem. Like, it's not that, I mean, obviously you're solving that problem, but I want to know what you solve as a problem, especially in the interoperability world. Like, because that is what is important to me. I want to know why you and the guy previously and the guy after you, the girl after you, is solving it in a different way. So you really have to keep in mind who is in front of you. And even though you have, like, Eomji, I lost you. Are you guys? Eomji, I think I lost you. Urban, are you there? Okay, I cannot hear anyone else. Can you guys hear me? You can talk in the chat.
I'm sorry. Yes, I am here. Let me.
I think we lost Eomji.
Seems to be an internet issue. Keep on going, Pauline. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so this is one thing. Like, I think she was very right with this. And another thing that I found very useful is that, so based on your audience, sometimes you might talk to BD guys, right? Like, when you're going to try to raise, when you're going to go out there, these guys, they obviously have a small understanding, right, or technical solution, but that is the last thing they focus on at the beginning. Really is, like, they even think it's just so overwhelming because they hear a lot of noise, like they hear a lot of words that they just cannot fully grasp, right? So if, like me, you think that adding technical details would bring value and would make your project stand out in the first 5 minutes to a BD person, I guarantee you it doesn't. So I think it's exactly what Eomji said. You really need to know your audience. And another thing that is very important and that I always pay attention to when I am a judge is that how did the team come up? Like, let's say if I want to invest in you, I need to make sure that this team is at least at the bare minimum able to work together, right? So when you share your time of talking, when you explain, let's say you the backend guy, the other guy is the designer, let everyone maybe either speak for a little bit, or then make sure that everybody is well represented. Make sure that basically you come across like you're a united team. Like, if I feel that, and I had this problem with a few times in hackathon, one guy is talking and he doesn't mention anything else. He's alone. Basically, I'm not sure I want to work with that team because I need to get the feeling that everybody else that has built that application is involved and understand what they're doing. And so it's also important the way you show up, right? So you could be the project manager, you could be the person that is a bit better at talking, and that's completely fine. but remember how you attribute the role of other people. And if this is a matter of expertise, just let them talk. I think it's better. Again, I am not an English native speaker. This is my third language. So I know it's super annoying, and sometimes you don't come across as in your native language. But yeah, there's techniques. Like you can really, really, really practice. And it's a pain. It's unfortunate that we have to go through that. Urban is the same anyway, but we really know, and we think it's very brave for people that just try and but you can practice that. I guarantee you, there's a lot of things out there on the internet where you can find way to practice how to pitch. And honestly, it's so important because if you can communicate very clearly about your product with the smallest amount of words, and that is very impactful, and the person understand it very quickly, you win already a big part of the bet. So that is, but that, of course, if you're a backend engineer, maybe you didn't have so much opportunity before to do it, and it's the same for everyone, right? So really don't hesitate to try. At least that's what I wanted to say. And I am not sure if Eomji is finding the internet back, but
I actually see her as if she would have been already back. So I don't know, maybe something's going on that we don't know. I'm back. Hello, Eomji. She is back. Eomji, can I ask you just like to bounce off and on again? Because I see that you should be on stage actually, but you're not. Yeah.
Something happened to me before, yeah.
Yeah,
And
maybe Pauline, as a follow-up question, because you get to talk to a lot of engineers, developers, early stage founders, and all that. And sure, the hackathon use case is very important because we are in a builder competition context right now. But it also goes back to just like being out there talking to people, right? It goes way beyond just the hackathon. What's your advice to some people, actually going out there, talking to people, getting the word out? Because that's where the rubber meets the road. Like that's actually important, right?
Yeah, you mean the case that you have built something and you want to you go out there, you start to like talk about your product. I mean, really, this is probably it's tougher than building it. Like in my opinion, it's like so difficult, and also because it's a complete different skill set. So if you don't have, I have come across a lot of founder, but sometimes the one who have this very easy way to do basically what Eomji has been talking about, and are also very technical. There's not that many of them, but I have one person in mind, which is Ismail. He's from Lagrange protocol. I don't know if you guys know, but when he talks, it's so fluid. He's extremely good at it. I mean, watch talk with him, and he's really technical as well. But basically what he says is that he really, it's just practice. Yeah, maybe he has a bit of an easier time, but it's just really getting out there. The more you speak about it, the more you practice on it, the easier it will come. Like and I 100% guarantee you guys that I know how much it makes you cringe at the beginning to talk about your product and thinking like, but if you keep pitching in a way that doesn't attract any curiosity from people, you need to pivot. Like that is very important. That's why you said at the beginning, Eomji, and we have seen 100 of awesome tools. They were very cool. The tech was nice because we're technical, so we like playing with it, but nobody ever used them. And I think it's very important that when you talk about, if you see no reaction, if you see no interest, if nobody's picking, just even following question, that probably means that the way you pitch it is not, it doesn't attract curiosity. And then you really, really need to wonder why. It could be that your app is awesome and you still fall into that category, and it's unfortunate, but it's really like this. Like we've seen it many times. So yeah, I don't know how what else to add to this, but another thing I wanted to bounce back on something you said as well is when you said it's really good to practice with different people, and that I could not agree more. Like I think last week, I wrote Explain Like I'm 5 about Wormhole Protocol, right? It's going to be out soon. This is hard. Like it's actually not easy. Interrupt protocol is not. I mean, but I could not use any technical term. Like not one single term. Like literally, I went into a space analogy to explain it. It's because I could not even use I don't know relayer at some point. Like I didn't know how to do it. But this is a really good example because you have to make sure you understand it fully and you grasp what's important, what makes it interesting, what makes it relevant, and then you make it easily understandable by everyone. So literally at some point you pitch your app to your mom, and if she cannot understand anything about what it does, like you can even use analogy or metaphor. Okay, if you put some ZK verification, I'm not sure. Like maybe that's a bit of a hard one, but you can still try that. And I think you really need to try with different people. Don't keep trying with your engineering friends because no, everybody's going to tell you it's awesome, but it doesn't work to the rest, and it needs to work for everyone.
Now, I think there's one thing I wanted to add about talking to different people is there's I think even book called a mom test that if you're talking to someone they may say it's good, they will not give you also very honest feedback. So this is something you want to test your product page. And one of the nice metric I can tell is if you pitch your product to someone, either they ask you some question, or either they're gonna ask you your contact, or either they're going to be sharing your product to somebody. Those are all kind of very nice signal that your product is interesting and someone wants to talk about it. And if you get a really no reaction, even not on anger, maybe it's worse. If they said that isn't it same as something, then you have no opportunity to explain why is it different. But if someone saw and it's indifference, then that's the worst thing. So you need to provocate something, and that's the reason why you can see that it's now a little bit becoming a marketing thing, where you can see that some people doing noise marketing or try to make some conversation, so make yourself in the map. And normally the leaders in that exact category wouldn't usually do that, but the following ones try to perhaps do that by capturing that a mind share in the people. So a lot a product a narrative is something very difficult to detach complete from a marketing branding bits. Especially if you're a founder, early stage project with a small people, what you're talking about your product is exactly sales pitch, exactly marketing pitch. But you want to first think about how to provocate some thoughts from people, not necessarily making very cheap fighting tricks, but that's perhaps nice metric to think about.
Yeah, and I think the worst is no nothing, no reaction. That means they either didn't get it, and most of the time it's just they didn't get it because they are not, otherwise they always have a question so there is a question in the chat that says how to get the messaging tight if you have a product for several audiences. This is very hard, and it's often something also that you do a lot of as developer, because your target audience are developers, right? So we target highly technical people, but often you have to deal a lot with maybe more product people, which are not as technical. And so, I mean, this is really the key feature, and this is the problem. You must adapt to who you're talking to, exactly as you said, Eomji, at the beginning. If you need to make I did this once, I remember I saw it once. If you need to make a different deck because you're not talking to the same audience, I don't know, if you make a deck, let's say you're raising, and your app is a 2.5 web 2.5 app, right? You want to raise from web 2 or you want to raise from web 3. You cannot have the same deck. It's not possible. Those web 2 guys are not going to get what you are, your jargon or your wording, right? Then you make 2 decks. Okay, then you as long as you know who you're talking to is the most important. And again, even with technical people, like imagine if you have, let's say your audience is technical and not technical. When you talk to technical people, you can go on a high level, right? They will straight away ask the question that basically will lead you to explain more technical details, right? It will come obvious to them. I had I had actually exactly this case. I think it was in a hackathon in Prague, and this guy had built something on the AVS, like it was a software risk-taking app. Anyway, after 10 seconds, they started to explain the app, and it was obviously like a bit of a technical picture. After 10 seconds, we all had the same question. Like straight away, we knew exactly where to pinpoint because we knew where it was going to be difficult. And basically, they didn't even have to mention what was the hard part of doing. We knew where the challenge was going to be as soon as they started talking about what they were trying to solve. So you also have to, you can start on a high level, and that would be maybe more suitable for a product manager and a tech audience as well. And then when you're talking to the tech people, they will ask exactly those questions. They're like, how do you solve that? Because that is hard. How can you make it that fast? How can you, like they will ask the question. So I think back to what Eomji said at the beginning, it's about sparkling the curiosity, because you have to believe that in front of you, you have people they know. What if they're going to invest in you, they have seen hundreds and thousands of texts. So they know what they're looking for. And I think if you give them a clear explanation, they would straight away be able to pinpoint what is very interesting and what you basically think is interesting too, of course.
And I think like the kind of two example I want to a little bit give to help Lamar is like one is like typical blockchain projects has this problem, especially like either it's you're like a projects for developers, so they're like you are expecting developer building on top of it, or you having end user like using that application. I think it comes a lot in the like even you're building technical product. What happens is as soon as you have a token, then token is making a lot of people as your stakeholder, and suddenly you have a like different audience with a complete different mindset and different how to say like objectives. So they're like you are technical product and you are expecting people using your technology to building something, but you still need to also take care of the certain audience who are very important stakeholders, but they are not actually directly how to say primary user your product. So perhaps Malama, that's the case you're talking about. Or another case, like typically you have a segmented audience is like a somewhat we're hitting the same thing with the same target, but perhaps like each target is slightly like a fragmented in their own audience, and you need to actually talk to everyone with the same product. It provide a value to all, but they're really like mingled in different places, or they don't really like align with that, and you need to address them all. Maybe one example can be like a Wormhole is like a cross-chain messaging, so you're going to be used by a lot of different ecosystem, but maybe different ecosystem developers are maybe different audience. So depending on what kind of challenges you're taking, there's two tips I can give. First is like yes, you cannot cover every audience in one channel in one message. So that's the reason why you may see that some either protocols or even Web2 projects may spawn out having a different Twitter account for like a developers now. I'm not saying that if this is the right move or not. Sometimes it's working, sometimes it's fragmenting even more. But my first advice is going to be, especially your project is like small and now growing, you need to identify who is the primary user who's going to make the difference of your project right now, and you need to address them first and conquer the others. We cannot have everyone at once. You cannot onboard everything. You cannot solve every problem at once. That's the reason why sometimes if you go to like, if you're building project saying that it's a global market, everyone going to be using it, in a nicest way in the beginning, it sounds very, very bullshit because it's impossible. You said that my go-to market, my potential market size is the whole earth. Like every VC going to be like, yes, technically it could be, or theoretically, but practically it's impossible. So sometimes it's much easier. You start from niche market, niche audience, that it's easier to communicate with them. And the ones when you gain that, you can exponentially grow. So I hope that's a bit of answer. But if you want to know a little bit more, of course, you can message me on Twitter as well.
It's a never-ending. Let's see. Yes, I'm on. It's a never-ending story, isn't it? How to communicate about these things, how to market them, how to build the early-stage communities, and it kind of all connects, right, from different angles. We've all seen good and bad examples, so maybe not to like bash anybody on public calls, but I think all of us are very happy to dive into these topics. Like Eomji said, if somebody wants to run something by us or anything the like, please feel free to reach out. So anyway, we are at the top of the hour. I know this could be a 10-hour call easily. It's very
don't challenge us on that, Erwin.
No, it's a lot to unpack, right? If you think about it, there's definitely a lot to unpack. So first of all, Eomji, thank you very much for sharing all of these things. For people that are not aware, Eomji from Encode Club. Encode Club is actually a very tight partner with us. We work very closely on several different things. Amongst others, this year we had a education initiative. We had a hackathon that recently concluded, and they are actually running the Sigma Accelerate program, which is a 8-week accelerator starting I think end of November, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. I know we went back and forth.
Very soon. Yeah.
Yes, very soon. So we do highly encourage people to apply to all of these things, even if you're not competing in Sigma Sprint or did not compete in the Encode hackathon. Please do apply. They do put on fantastic programs. So thank you very much for participating. It's awesome to be collaborating with you, awesome to be working with you. Pauline, thank you very much for moderating this. This was a awesome session. So thank you both. Thank you everybody who tuned in. This video is going to be available as a replay on Crowdcast, and we're getting it over to YouTube very soon as well. So thank you. Have a wonderful day. Yeah, enjoy.
Bye.
See you, everyone. Thank you.